live once again. I'm here with Mr. Meade in the building, and you've got my big sister, Sefena Cooper. She's going to be here, and she's living out in America, so she's going to have a real different, I would have said, and realistic insight of what we're going to be talking about today, which is, of course, what's buzzing around the whole George Floyd and what's happening in America. It's a crazy time. I thought it was a crazy time with the coronavirus,
Right.
and it just went like left. It's just getting crazier. Like 2020, I think I underestimated it for sure. But yeah, so the first thing I kind of want to get onto or start by saying is, what is it like out there now? Because obviously you're in like Boca Raton, for those who don't know, Florida areas. What is it like out there? Like, what's the atmosphere? What's going on over there?
I think most people are upset. People who weren't really paying attention before, it's kind of a, oh my God, is this really a thing? You know, you have two ends of the spectrum. You have those who were already conscious before this happened, and then you have those who woke up due to what happened. So you have a mixture of emotions all across the spectrum. Those who are angry because they're tired of seeing it. Those who are like, wow, I didn't even know this was a thing, you know? So
how could, when you say people that didn't know it was a thing, how could they not know? Because this isn't the first time it's happened, like even recently, is it? Because it happens all the time.
Right.
So, yeah.
I would say with America and American culture, so to speak, and especially American Christian culture, it's patriotic to stand up for your country no matter what. It's patriotic to defend your police officers no matter what, because they protect and serve. It's this this loyalty, this I don't even know how to explain it. This deep loyalty, regardless of whether wrong or right is happening. You know what I mean?
Blind.
Yeah, blind following essentially. And so that's what you have. You really just have people that are waking up, people who still are saying in the midst of this, okay, what happened was wrong, but they shouldn't be looting and they shouldn't be rioting, and that's a whole nother topic as well. So yeah,
crazy. Like it's, I just find it so hard to fathom, really, that in 2020, some people in, you know, race or whatever is treated like dogs, like
right,
by anyone,
right,
like of authority. Like you would have thought the real racists, bigots, and you know the racists don't have power. Like in your head, you're thinking, well, they went a long time ago. They don't have power, and then you kind of look and you go, heck. They still do.
And it became more obvious, especially to minorities here, once Trump came in office. You know, regardless of who you vote for, you're always going to have some kind of unrest. Especially with Obama, you have the black guy. You saw the unrest with that, of course.
Yeah.
But then when you have rhetoric coming from the office that is saying that it is kind of underhandedly saying that it's okay, you now have people that are bold or emboldened to do whatever they or say whatever they want, you know?
It's great. It's an obvious racism. Like it's not like, okay, so racism in the UK, so in comparison, you've got the UK racism is a subtle racism.
Right.
And it's very much to do with class, and it's very much to do with a case of, well, I'm not ready to share my pie yet. Like that kind of underlying kind of racism that you can't really put your finger on to say it's definitely racism. It could just be a bias against that in particular person. But
exactly,
if you're on the receiving end, it feels like, and it's pretty shit, racism. So it's weird to kind of see them just outright, just no questions asked, dragging people from their cars, running up into people's homes. And it's almost like, I know, don't get me wrong, social media compiles all of the narrative. So if that's the narrative, then they're going to get as much as they can on that narrative. So we're pushing a lot more. Obviously, there's going to be loads of cops out there and loads of scenarios that haven't been filmed that were perfectly fine, or the cops did their jobs properly.
Right.
But there should not be that many brutality cases. Like I find it bizarre. And then, like I said, like in the UK, it's very different. It's not so obvious. You know, they'll profile you. They'll stop and search you,
right,
because of your skin color. But generally speaking, they're not going to stop and search you and drag you to the floor, put you in cuffs, and then, you know what I mean? and
then on top of it, right?
Yeah.
And there's no guns.
And there's no guns, and I think that makes a difference too.
It does. It does.
Well, then we spoke about the fear factor of what guns bring.
Right.
Both sides.
Right.
Because it's you know, you're always conscious that anyone can have a gun because it's legal.
Right.
So it's easy to get your hand on, and you're aware that all the police officers are strapped up too. Right.
Right. I think it's an issue of unchecked power, to be honest. You know, any power given without any check, you know, nobody checking up on it, or nobody holding that system accountable, can always be abused, you know, because we don't only find white officers doing it, it's Black officers doing it as well. You see what I'm saying? It's across the spectrum. So it really is an unchecked power that we're dealing with right now.
And everyone keeps using the word systematic, you know, racism, which for me, that makes a lot of sense, because it's not necessarily, you know, this person's of this color, so I have to treat them this way.
Right.
You know, we expect them to do this.
Right.
We're going to go in on the high end.
Right.
We expect them to be resistant. We expect them to be
right.
We expect them to be carrying. We expect all of these things.
Right.
We go in up here.
Right.
Assessing the situation. We treat
right.
in the same tier. And
right.
I don't know, how is it set up? Like, okay, really quickly, but how is it set up in terms of if you know, the law enforcement out there? Like, so you have, obviously, you know, the FBI.
Right.
You know,
there's different departments, of course. You know, there's the FBI, of course, will take a federal case and go into deep investigation with it that way. But you're going to have your city cops, which I think most of the run-ins are with the main ants on the ground. You know what I mean? Yeah. Before it even gets to a federal case, so to speak.
But who checks them? Who checks those main? Who's supposed to check them?
Who is supposed to check who?
Well,
the chief police, essentially the chief police is supposed to, he's the chief over that particular city, so he's supposed to keep that in check. You know what I mean?
What if he's racist? Who checks him? Who does he answer to? What's the chain of command, you know? Like, it's what...
Right.
How do you become a chief of police?
You have to be voted in, I believe it is. It's a
voted in
by the people.
And this is exactly what Kalon tagged me in the other day, actually, where he was talking about the power of the vote. You know what I mean? We're voting in these judges. We're voting in these officers. We're voting in, as far as chiefs and mayors, and people are not taking the midterm elections as serious as they are the presidential elections. And so what you're having is there's a whole ignorance in that part, because I did a midterm election about the last one. I can't remember exactly which year it was, but I'm trying to do my research on each of the judges, and I'm trying to pull them up, and there's nothing for me to go based off of. There's no record. I can't find anything. I can't find anything helpful for me to be able to say, okay, well, he did this, or this is the percentage of people that he's put away for this. There's nothing for me to really go on when it comes to that kind of voting system. So it's really about putting the information out there, which again, I think is strategic, because why would you want to give information like that out to people? You know what I mean? So
benefits, keep people ignorant, benefits certain people.
The system continues to work as it has always been working, you know?
Would you say it's more out of date?
I would say so, like, especially with the actual voting system that we have. And there's an electoral vote where sometimes if you get enough electoral votes, then it surpasses the population, the popular vote. So it's like you have representatives for a state, and if you have enough of them, they speak on behalf of the whole state. Okay, well, that worked when we had horses and carriages, where we didn't have an electronic system, where I just needed to get my votes to this one guy, and then the one guy spoke for the people. But now we don't need that. And when you touch stuff like that with Americans, it's like, no, it's the Constitution. You can't touch it. You can't touch it. It's like this holy, untouchable system that does need to be upgraded, I think, in my opinion.
Well, it's the ones who are in power now that don't want it to be touched, because
right.
they wouldn't necessarily be in power had it been touched.
Right.
Cool. It's that kind of vicious trail. Like, why would they break it if it means it could break them?
Right.
And,
right.
You know, like the UK system's old, man. Like,
right.
The whole
400 years old.
And yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, it's not even. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's the thing, though. I think you guys understand from a sense of I'm a Black British-born woman raised in England till I was 13, brought over to the system. So there's a lot that I'm still, even now at 36, I'm still learning, because it's just like, a lot of it was very foreign. You're coming onto news story, you're learning the culture as well, because I'm British, and they're looking at me like, what? Why do you talk different, you know? Yeah. So it's just, you're learning everything, you're navigating through everything, and stuff that should really be handed down, information that should be handed down, especially in depth in schools and education, and teaching us how to. I don't think they're going to push for, to be honest.
I want to touch on that a little bit later as well, but yeah, like you say, like, I don't know. For me, it's just we're one gun and one heavy use of a taser away from being where America's at, essentially.
Right.
The reason why I say that is because, it's a drastic statement, but I can still see the fear element, I think, drives a lot of it. And I think the whole system drives a lot of it. And I think a lot of the kind of bringing people through, and this kind of almost inner cult within police force, and just the hierarchy of just how things are governed and run. I think very much a case of, if your son wants to be a police officer and you're an officer, you push him through the right doors. And, you know, there's just all of these different kind of ways to kind of get on, and it's very one of our own kind of vibe. So there's no new voices or new opinions or different sites. And I think it used to be that way because of the agenda, you know. Certain people needed or wanted the power.
And you want to keep the others from rising up, essentially.
And then you see, and then that's what they call, you know, law and order, because that's what they've done. They literally put who they want in power here. It isn't about what the people want. It's about what they think is going to control the system. I mean, that whole statement from Trump, going back to the chief of police and saying to them, you know, dominate. I feel like that kind of comes from, because he's not really coming from a political world. He comes from more of a business world. So I feel like a lot of his views is from what he's seen and heard growing up, not necessarily.
And also from how he treats his own employees, in a sense of, I say what I say, you do it. Like, that's it. But the country can't be run that way. It's not a dictatorship. You know what I mean?
It's politics, and that's what he does. And that's what I'm saying.
You not think, Kay, like when you said about the difference I think between Britain and the US is that the US has violence woven into its culture from like the very beginning.
That's true.
You know, it's birthed out of revolution. You look at all the videos, all the movies, all that stuff that comes out of Hollywood. You know, everything's solved with a gun. Britain kind of has that a little bit, but
not as much.
Has a different relationship with those in charge, because we've never had like a revolution here. You know, the monarchy has survived a long time. It's a very different kind of balance. Whereas if you look at US, the psyche of the US kind of thing, it looks, everything is quite about the police carry guns, and you know the heroes all, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of the most famous ones. He carries a minigun kind of thing. It's kind of woven into the culture over there a little bit from the outside looking in anyway.
Well, that's a good point. The superpower, that's something that they always kind of recognize, I think in the States, always recognizes the superpowers, the ultimate military, the superpower,
Right.
the influence over the world. And I think, like you say, that's a good point. But then the reason why I say, especially with the UK, is we seem to just fall in line and kind of run behind and copy, if that makes sense. Like it's not, it's a lot of the stuff that they do, we end up adopting, like we're almost following that trail of,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So look,
Right.
I think we are a long way. Like you say, it's not woven into our culture enough. We are the land of the PC, I think. I think it's all, but I think it's just because of politics as to why we're not there.
Right.
We're better at it and we do it. So those people who are racist in power over here are playing a politics.
Right.
They're not going to make it off.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're going to be a lot better at it, basically.
Well, they've always been like the elite. The British elite have always been really good at keeping things from boiling over. You know, like when the French had their revolution and started killing all the people in power, the British elite kind of managed to stop that from happening. After 2 world wars, you had a young male population that knew how to conduct warfare. All of a sudden, we get the NHS and loads of benefits and stuff just after that, because they know that there's a population that is informed and smart.
Right.
And if you didn't give them people those things, you know, you're going to have a revolution, like a proper revolution.
Right.
And so the British elite have always been really good at doing that.
Right.
That's why the monarchy survived so long.
A little to keep them
a little, keeping them quiet.
Right.
You know, understanding that, you know, these people can turn around and have a revolution. And I wanted to ask you, Sefena, how close do you think the US is to kind of erupting into like a violent revolution at the moment?
I think we're pretty much already there. A lot of the videos, I don't know if you guys have been following a lot of the videos, but there's been a lot of infiltrations into groups. So you'll have people that are pretending to be part of Black Lives Matter, spraying or destroying property. You have cops pushing people, and they've actually got it on footage now. And then it starts a major, because at first it's all peaceful, and then you push, okay, you're pushing my people in the crowd, we're coming at you. I think people are just frustrated, and then couple that with staying at home for how many months that we've been in the house. It's just frustration, isn't it? Like on every level, you know?
Boiling over.
I do think that like let's look at the case of George Floyd, where the one officer, Derek, was charged as soon as there's an uproar, but people kept going, no, we want all 4 of them. So I really do feel like if there was no kind of eruption, we wouldn't have gotten the results that we saw.
Crazy.
Which is sad. Because remember, the first autopsy performed by the government or whoever was overseeing that came back that he had underlying conditions. So they were already prepared to stand up and say, listen, it wasn't his knee that killed him. It was the fact that he had, listen, I don't care if 90% of his arteries were clogged. What we saw on TV was not okay. What we saw on footage was not okay. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where they were prepared to bat for their team. You know what I mean? They were prepared to come out guns blazing for their blue guys. And yeah, it erupted. It completely erupted. People have had enough, you know? People have had enough for sure.
It's a hard topic to talk about, man. Like it's just it's kind of surreal in a way, because it's just like, it's hard to kind of get your head around. Like certain times I've just looked at things and I'm like, but how? Just how?
The thing is, I think because you and I were raised in an environment where color genuinely just wasn't, we'd all bat together, white, blue, orange, like we're, you know, I think that's what I appreciate about martial arts, in a sense of we were a family, regardless of where we were coming from. You know what I mean? And I appreciate that foundation as far as that goes, because coming over here, it is very much divided.
Pick a side.
Yeah, pick a side. as far as not even willing to hear each other out. You know what I mean? Like I've told my American friends over here, if I was over there and somebody called me the N-word and my white friend was with me, you're getting pounded. Not by me, by my white friend. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just, it's you guys want to play kumbaya, and we can't play that with racism. We just can't, you know? And so we were just raised different. It's just it's a different field that we're on, so to speak.
So what do you think, where do you think it's going? Like, what so everyone's marching, protesting. What do everyone want? Like, because they're not going to turn around tomorrow and be like,
right,
okay, everything, we're going to start holding accountable. We're going to, like, what is it? What's the end goal? Or what's even a step towards the end goal? Because, yeah, they've done this now, and they're prosecuted these police officers, but it's literally taken the whole world
to stand up.
We can't have the whole world protesting every time. Like,
every single time.
Like, it's not like, but it's literally taken look how much people's out there, and like, there's so many previous to them. Is this just literally? Are we just literally witnessing the straw that broke the camel's back, like the last straw that does make a big change? But then, what is the big change? Is the big change that people do start getting prosecuted a lot quicker, and it's not just you're on death duty.
You know what it is? I don't think it's so much about seeing them prosecuted quicker. Our cousin got killed February 14th, 2018. He's still eating 3 meals and probably playing basketball on the court. It's not really about seeing them prosecuted faster, because the system is the system. And if a case is stronger, they're always going to take that over the whatever they feel. They're going to do it their way. But it's about seeing the justice. And I think because going back to unchecked and having an unchecked, almost like a mafia, we need accountability. So one of my other friends was saying, okay, well, maybe what we need is a third party, an unaffiliated third party that can come in, that let's say a good cop can go and report to anonymously or whatever, so that things can be investigated. Because a lot of the good cops, maybe they are trying to stand up and they are getting bullied out of the force. You know, there's been many stories like that. So they need a third party checking system for sure.
Well, see, 100% I agree with that. But I was kind of thinking, isn't that more the FBI? Like, I guess they just deal with what they would class as more serious. But for me, I'm thinking FBI is more of a separate entity that kind of outranks.
Right, and I think, I don't know the details to the FBI. I know it's more federal cases. Yeah. Like the FBI is what they were doing with the president. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like where you have to now, you're now looking into bigger people who don't have a checking system. They're the ones that check them. But no, I think they need a separate. I don't think we need to go that deep into the system. I think they just need a check. They just check and balance.
Just an Overwatch.
Right.
Even if it is just government officials regularly checking up on what happens, going on ride-alongs.
Right. We have DOJ reports to prove that people are unjustly treated or their rights are being violated, but especially in poor areas, they don't have the money to represent themselves. Obviously, it's going to be a thing where it just happens. They just need a check. There needs to be something that keeps them in check, and they don't have that right now. Not even amongst the American people, because they're more quick to align with the officer than they are with the victim. You know, so they definitely need a third party checking system, I think.
Just to provide the counterpoint to it, I think that whenever there's something like this, when you've got like a corrupt power system, whatever you want to call it, like just corruption, it's always tempting to kind of say, well, let's have like someone else to like an independent third party to come in. Let's give them the power to kind of fix the problems. And it's always open to abuse, because it's one of those famous things that we can never have enough oversight. And I always try and think, what is the problem? And it's all, I think one of the main issues, the problem that you kind of spoke about here is concentrated power. Like, so whenever you have concentrated power, there's power corrupts and all that sort of thing. So what we want to do is kind of disperse the power. And you kind of spoke earlier on about people electing chief of polices, but one of the big problems is that you can't find information on these people. It's hard to vote. Like, it's a very deliberately obscure system. So maybe it would be better to make that system unobscure, more transparent, make it easier to vote, so that so that the people hold the corrupt officers to account. You know, like if the chief of police is on his watch, you know, people are getting shot, or there's not really good crime outcomes and all that sort of thing. You want to be able to elect someone else in and get this guy out and prosecute as because we do. I always think when these sorts of things happen in the UK or the US, we have laws against murder. Like we had that what he did, he murdered someone. We have a law against murder. That man should be now being prosecuted for murder. We don't need more rules or authorities or special things to kind of. We just need this guy to be held accountable. So dispersing that kind of power, and I think when you just get back to my main point, when you get a third party in charge, it's just another system that's open to abuse because
that's true.
You're gonna have as well. What's the likely outcome there? There's going to be another fat white guy making money on top, and he's going to want to protect his position, and that's just what happens. That's what you see over and over again, kind of thing. That would be my fear of it, anyway.
Yeah,
there was a. Go ahead.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think, like you say, it's the power. It's the power that corrupts, the concentrated power. So it's almost having a way of everyone being accountable for any wrongdoing, because I think what's happening is as well is they're getting away with it because they know how to. If you hold the cards, you know exactly what to write. You know exactly who you take on that ride along with you. You got, you know what I mean? And these guys are socializing with each other outside of the police force, of course, like you do any work. So now you have maybe 6 police officers that get on really well, families intertwined, whatever, and you've got a gang within a gang almost. So those 4 people will cover that one person that steps out of line that day.
Right.
This is the problem. Where if it was a way whereby those 4 people, or at least 2 of those 4 people, go, no, that's not right. I have to, or I will be reprimanded, and they're almost fearful of that, or that was questioned more.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think almost if you take the power away, like the complaints don't go. There's no point. Like, I even know there's no point sending a complaint to a police station over here.
Police watchdog.
What's the point?
Right.
You're literally going to complain about the person that you're complaining to the person. What's the chance of doing anything?
Right.
Yeah. You want less bureaucracy and more democracy.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what you want.
Right. That's exactly true. They were saying too about an application being made where people can upload the videos of the recordings of officers, and things start mobilizing that way. So it's like a big database where things are it's essentially just dropped in by people all over the country and filtered through that way. I don't know, I don't know what would be the better way.
See, we spoke about this before as well, and we spoke about, because over here there's like, you get targets to like give out speed, like tickets or having a house a certain amount of arrests or whatever. But what incentives?
Right.
Handled people really well. Dealt with, maybe if you had to interact with someone and give them a good opinion or experience of the police,
right.
We ask the public to, give that information back. I'm sure a lot of people will be happy to give that information back. And then these people will get pushed up the line in power. If you don't get X amount of good feedback, recommendations, or we go to the last 8 people that you was arrested, you know what I mean? Like, and we ask your experience and how they spoke to you and whatever. If it's not right, then they can't go up the ladder.
Right. Well, especially with Derek's rap sheet, I was wondering.
It's crazy. That rap sheet's crazy.
Why he was still there.
Crazy. He's been involved in killings and this and that and whatever. And it's just one cover, but it's not open to the public like that. It's not open to scrutiny, which is like what I said, dispersing it, let everyone see his rap sheet. And then
Right.
you can even say, once he's been involved in one, you can even put it back to the public. Do we want this guy is
Right.
policing our neighborhood?
Right.
Everyone comes back with no, then he has to go.
Right.
I'm very sorry, but that incident has caused this for your career.
Right.
You've got to make sure. So now you've got to doubly make sure that you're doing your job correctly.
You're doing your job correctly. Exactly.
I think there has to be something like that. But anyway, I could literally talk about this all day because, yeah, it's crazy. But I kind of wanted to go into it a little bit more now and kind of go on to more on the citizens' point of view. So everyone else sitting back now, what I've been seeing a lot of, you've got the movement Black Lives Matter, right?
Right.
And what that's saying is, you know, there's a problem amongst the Black community, and we feel or are being treated as if it don't matter, right?
Right. Right.
Now, this all lives matter crap, yeah, annoys me. It just annoys me.
I know.
It's so self-centered, like so insecure that if I say something, you go, yeah, but what about this?
Right.
Why does it have to be about you? And I think it's almost that kind of idea of everything involves you. And and again, we use terms like white privilege and this and that and whatever, and people don't understand them. And I think that's based on the educational aspect of it. But it looks everyone kind of takes it as an attack on them. Right. But like, okay, so I wouldn't treat, obviously it'd be irrational, but Meade anyway because he's white or because he comes from a heritage of conquerors, essentially.
Right. Right.
I'm not gonna be.
I'm Irish. What about?
He's like, I'm with you guys.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, it's that kind of, it's this kind of mentality that it's always the case. It's always a battle, and it's always a battle of who's important. And if someone's important, someone else isn't. So by saying Black Lives Matter, you're saying that everything else is not important. And that I'm getting back from people is the reasons why they're saying that. But if someone said to me, White Lives Matter, I'd be like, well, that's weird because there doesn't seem to be a problem. They showed me a problem that they were finding difficult, and then they said white lives. Then I'll be like, oh, cool, yeah, you're right.
Right.
It's just, this is my opinion. It's just very self-centered, uneducated, and just foolish.
Right.
And a good analogy I heard was if there was two people and there was a house burning on fire, and they go, one of them goes, come on, help me, we're going to put out this fire out this house, come help. And the other one turned around to them and went, yeah, but I've got a house too, what about mine? Yeah, but, it's not on fire. But it's not, let's go help the house on fire. Yeah, but what about my house? And that's what I hear when you're saying all lives matter. We're saying this is problem is happening, and you're going, yeah, but what about me? And it kind of just brings back to that whole idea of white privilege, because it brings back to that whole, if it's not about me, it's not, why are we talking about it? And if it is about, then it needs to come back to me. Hey, if you're if this protest means that you're going to get heard, I want to be heard too. And it's just, it just, for me, look, I can only speak from a black man's point of view. So I want to hear what Meade has to say on this. But for me, that's what I hear and I see when I hear All Lives Matter. And I think it's ridiculous. What's your view on that, Meade?
I think that Black Lives Matter it is one of the worst designed PR campaigns ever.
Absolutely.
Ever.
I can agree with that.
It's the worst, because I think a lot of the time when the socially liberal, progressive, what you want to call it, try and push an idea, they're very reactive. They don't think, I don't know, what's the word, tactically about stuff. So they're saying Black Lives Matter, which is, of course, and there is an issue and we need to solve it and we need to make people aware of it. But they didn't really think about the reaction they were going to get, because of course people were going to turn around and say, all lives matter. It's the most obvious thing people are going to say. And it's because imagine you're some poor white dude, deep south, lives in a trailer, like his mum's a heroin addict, whatever, and Black Lives Matter, he's going to go, well, look at my situation. Do I not matter? Like, all that sort of thing. I just think it was going to come back and bite people in the arse, whichever way it was put out there. And I don't know what a better slogan would have been, but I think that it was more divisive than it should have been, and it provoked the wrong reaction.
I see the angle that you're coming with, but I still kind of think like you have to have a certain mentality. If we're talking about a specific topic, and we say black man, it's about police brutality, racially profiling. This is the topic. We're not really talking about anything else. If we're talking about like a general scope, and it was a little more wider, and it was kind of like, and they started going into, we want jobs, we want this, we want that, we want the same, we want, like, but that's not what we're talking about.
I agree with you, man. But you're not. You're trying to think logically and say this is the conversation. This is where we're having it. But everyone comes in with their emotional baggage, and you say words, and then people have their own reactions to it. I think if I was gonna try and figure out a way of taking on this issue, I'd take it on like an individual issue. Like, for me, I think when I look at the problems from my brief reading of history in America and stuff, the policy I'll be fighting is the war on drugs, because that is most obviously the most racist policy there is. It's designed specifically to target Black Americans because they literally imprison people for carrying marijuana. And it's a, if you look into marijuana, you can have your opinions on marijuana, blah, blah, blah. It's not as dangerous as alcohol, all these things. It should never have been made illegal. It was made illegal to target Black people.
They actually came out and said it. They admitted it.
Yeah. And like now we're seeing legalization of states and rights. I focus on specific policies because this might sound controversial. Racism ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
People are going to be racist. Yeah. That stands for white people, Black people, Mexicans, this, that. People are going to judge people based on their skin no matter what, because that's just the way humans are wired. And you aren't going to change those people's minds because it's illogical. Like, their assumptions aren't based on reality.
Right.
So instead of trying to focus on a PR campaign which says Black Lives Matter because all rational human beings understand, yeah, of course, you're not dealing with rational human beings. You got to fight on specific policies, like the war on drugs being one. Private prisons, you know, that whole system of free essentially slave labor, so is what it is. Yeah,
so do you
fight those specific policies.
So I agree 100%. So, but from what you were saying is that's the problem. So is this Black Lives Matter movement helping that at all? Or is that just curing the symptoms? Is that not really getting to the systemic problem?
It's more divisive. It's more divisive than it is helpful. Even though it's getting eyes on an issue, and you're getting people who are sympathetic, but you're also getting people who are really like who could be like brought to the cause, turned off because they see it as divisive.
As we know, it's a PR, so obviously maybe it's just a door that needs to be opened. But is it a door that's open that then there needs to become a point where you go, okay, close that door, let's get into the deep roots of what this problem actually is and stop and then stop that as a PR stunt, like you say, like stop using that for, you've got the attention now, because by the time this is all done, the attention's there. And then I feel it's like, well, you've got to do something. Otherwise you can continue to make noise and cause problems. And what happens is the narrative changes to you interrupting society. Obviously, they're really trying to push it to these protests are making riots. Look, it's causing problems for local business. They're already trying to push that narrative already. So you start doing peaceful protests, but maybe blocking up an important road. That's going to stop people getting to work, stop the economy from work, and then they got that narrative there to kind of go, well, get off the street. This is not important anymore. Remember, you're going to slow down everyone by doing this. So I guess once the door opens, I guess it's a case of then.
Now, what do we do with that attention?
Right,
Right.
start taking off the big heads and questioning
Right.
the heads at the top. I guess that's the only thing you can do with it, and I think that's probably what the all the people in power should be looking to do, or the people, sorry, leading.
Right. Leading. Any leadership on any level, essentially.
Right,
Yeah,
Right.
start looking at the deep rooted problems.
I think we
I
understand,
think.
we know now, we understand that racism isn't going anywhere. My problem
Mm,
was never somebody disliking me because of my skin. It was more a person in power who has the power disliking me because of my skin, now abusing the fact that he has the opportunity to put me in prison or sit on my neck or whatever the case might be, or being a judge that now sentenced me longer than the white counterpart who we've both been caught with the same amount of marijuana. Like, it's not the racist neighbor that is the issue for me. It's now racism in a system that is
mm,
working to actively oppress. That's the problem. Because I don't care if you like me or not. Okay, you know what I mean?
I like you.
It's just that, you know what I mean. It's that kind of
Yeah, no, I get it. I think that. Well, obviously, I've not really been in them circles of power, but
right,
like how, like, okay, the ultimate racist icon being like, I suppose, Adolf Hitler or something like that, who was
right,
obviously racist and in power.
right,
I think most people in power now, I I think are like look concerned with getting more power, staying in power, like we said earlier on. And I
right,
think racism is one of those kind of levers you can pull to keep people at each other's throats. So if these people are concerned about these people, they're not worrying about what I'm doing. I'm
right.
100% sure right now there's loads of stuff being passed in the US. I think in the US now they passed a bill that says the federal authorities can investigate your internet usage without a warrant.
I
So they
saw
can
that.
look at what you do.
I
Yeah,
saw that
and that all went in under the radar because of what's
under
going
the
on at the
radar.
moment. And I'm not saying, you know,
2014. Right,
It's
yeah,
opportunity,
and
I
so I'm saying like yeah, so it serves it. These sorts of things, these sorts of arguments serve people. And what I meant by PR campaign, like what you said, Kalon, was really good. If that was what they thought in the beginning, but what I'm saying about being reactive is a lot of the people who are trying to make change and affect change don't think through what's going to happen. They just do something like Black Lives Matter sounds like a cool PR slogan, not
right,
realizing the kind of stuff that's going to happen after it. If you were going to take a bit more of a tactical approach and say, okay, how can we build bridges with other disaffected communities who have the same problems that we have and come together and form an actual base around these
right.
issues to actually affect change? I think that to me makes the most sense to actually affect change rather than being coming up with a slogan that just ends up we don't know what its effects are really because nothing's changed. It seems to have got worse.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, well, going on to the
To the intelligence.
last point I want to talk about anyway, is the education aspect. I feel
Right,
like there is a real lack of understanding, and I can't be mad at the lack of understanding. I mean, I have a lack of understanding even with my own race, really. But I can't be mad at that. But I think there's a real lack of what the person next to you is going through, what their struggle is, what
right,
your understanding is of them. Like, okay, we've been friends for a long time, but how many times when you've been with me have I been stopped and searched? Have I been But then if I turn around to you and said that used to happen to me on a regular basis, that used to think, you know what I mean? You don't know. That's not your fault, and it's not a case of you know what I mean. That's just more what I'm getting at, and then transferring that into our educational system.
right.
So you've got Black History Month that comes and goes like a wave, and
Mhm.
no one really learns Black. Why is there a month that's Black History?
Right,
Now
right,
we have a whole designated subject called history.
right,
Put it in there. It's history. You
right.
It's a token gesture, man.
yeah.
You know what? What I feel about them empty gestures. I hate them.
But guess what? Now, this is what we have to remember. Though we have to remember the foundation of where it all started. So you had a society of whites that didn't want to associate with blacks, right? So they had their own curriculum, they had their own water fountain. You couldn't swim with them because you were black.
Yeah.
Could possibly contaminate the pool. So what do they say? Okay, we're gonna make our own. We're gonna make our own. So that's really where it started from. So we couldn't get on TV, so we made black entertainment television. And so it seems divisive, but it's me
Not
creating
really,
my
yeah,
own
no,
because you wouldn't let me on yours, so I did my own thing. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's more that. So now, from us looking at from this side of history, we're looking at it like, oh well, that's divisive. Like, why don't we all do it together? Not realizing that it
Where
was
it came
started
from.
because we weren't allowed to participate in the beginning. You know what I mean?
But then this,
So
Yeah.
how do we change that?
but then this is what I'm saying. I think it's the educational element, because if
Absolutely.
I'm in a classroom with you, we're all wearing school uniform. I see you in the playground. We talk, we're friends, whatever. Both live in a house, whatever. You don't see any struggles. So you're
Right.
looking at me and go, wait, hold on. You've got a black entertainment TV. Why have you got a black entertainment? Okay,
Right.
I had a white entertainment thing. Everyone
Right.
had something to say about it. We're sitting in the same place. We're learning from the same teacher. We've
Right.
got around the same money in the back. But you know what I mean? They don't see the whole idea of there was no black superheroes growing
Right.
up. There's
Right.
no Barbie was blonde hair, white, blue eyes. There was
I
nothing.
didn't have any black dolls. And if I did have a black doll, it was ugly as hell. I
They
didn't
don't.
want that.
But this is the thing. They didn't highlight. They didn't highlight all of these things.
Right.
And I think that's where the confusion comes from. It's a lack of education.
Right.
And even for myself, like I said, if I want to learn about my history, I have to consciously do that.
Right.
However,
Right.
I've gone through a whole system of education.
Right.
Why is that? You're teaching me about things I didn't care about.
Right.
And
Right.
Mate, the whole education system is completely designed to shut down any kind of critical or independent
And that's
thought.
exactly right. Absolutely.
I watched a
100%.
video on it today, actually, funny enough, and I didn't understand. I never knew this, but the American public schooling system, which is actually very similar to our own, it originated in Prussia, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is one of the precursors to modern day Germany. And the Prussian schooling system was set up to facilitate the Industrial Revolution, to create factory workers. So people that would come in, do the job for 12 hours, go home, and not think about anything. That's why you sit in rows. That's why, you have toilet breaks. That's why there's a bell when you take breaks. Because the same as in the fact, it's all set up to train you to work in a factory. And so it's not there for you to learn, Socrates, Plato, all this stuff like philosophy and an understanding of Western culture, an understanding of African culture, of South American culture. It's not that. That's not what it's there to do. It's there to create obedient, non-critical citizens. That's what it's there for. So that's why Black History Month, little token. It's a little Black. You can't stop complaining now. You got Black History Month. That's
well, essentially, that's exactly what they did. They said, "Okay, we don't learn about ourselves. Oh, we're gonna go ahead and celebrate ourselves this month." When really, like you guys said, it should have been part of open curriculum from start to finish. But
just outdated. It's really basically everything you said, it just boils down to a really out of date system. It just doesn't make sense. Everyone knows it, but no one could do anything about it because the people are still holding on to power and circulating it.
People feel powerless.
Even as Meade said, if you create factory workers who are just trying to survive and they go to work and come home, we don't have time to change the system because we're trying to survive. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's that same.
And then they go, "Oh yeah, it's not my problem."
I can't do. I'm only one person, and we don't. What we've seen now, even with these protests, is how much can change if we do truly all come together. That's one thing that you have seen. You know what I mean? In the beginning, we had no officers arrested. After the protest, we have 4 arrested. We do have the power.
This just makes me think. It's such a random point, but it just makes me think of A Bug's Life so much. Oh man,
that's a sick film.
I'm like, yo, that one big ant, yeah, was getting beaten up by the grasshoppers. They all stood up and they didn't want it.
Yeah, man.
No.
Yeah, but that's why I think like they're gonna hold on to it for as long as they can,
Oh,
man. Them
absolutely.
grasshoppers, they're gonna do everything they can to get rid of it. And I don't think it's just for black people. I think that a lot of people could do with it. I think we need a cultural change, a cultural reset, whatever you want to call it. The
Right.
only thing I'm scared of is that revolution throughout history there's never been a peaceful one. There's never ever been it's always been
always bloodshed.
like always bloodshed,
Right.
and that's scary. That's scary. And I watched the US. I watched what's going on in the US, and it does scare me. It scares me a lot. I think Jesus Christ, like we're on the. Essentially, I live a very comfortable life. I think Kalon, you can agree with me. We all live comfortable lives, and we watch that George Floyd thing, and we think, "Fuck, man, like that's scary." Like that can happen to someone, and it's horrible, and you want to change it. Now it's like, what are people willing to sacrifice? I suppose is what I'm getting at. It's scary. It's a scary thought.
Right.
I think now, hopefully, I might probably am wrong. It shouldn't shed too much bloodshed simply because we're living in a world of influence where everything is done through influence, and everything and influence is a lot easier to obtain and a lot easier to spread.
Right.
We've got so many people in the black industry, just in entertainment industry, like from obviously we've always kind of had that, but they have a voice, like
they have a platform.
Yeah, they've got a massive platform. If Beyonce says something tomorrow and says pink bows are in, guys, guess what? Every girl in the world is buying a pink bow. Like it's, you know what I'm saying though? But
I'm going to buy a pink bow.
But it's influence. You actually have like presidents and stuff trying to cozy up to entertainers.
Right.
That's votes. Like it's influence. So I feel like it might be a battle of influence more. But like you say, it can always get messy. I just don't think it's going to be necessarily messy. Oh, I mean, it already is on the front line. I think it's going to be messy.
Well, not with camera phones facing you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Everything's getting recorded too.
Right.
But, within politics and really backhanded, and everything's going to be like, okay, this I don't know for a fact, but let's say this COVID thing was a bit iffy on my part, yeah?
Right.
But easily could say it's war, yeah?
Right.
But it's done in a whole completely different way.
Right.
It's not obvious. It's if there's countries out there who are looking at the weaponization of, different viruses and stuff.
Right. It's true.
We don't know. They're in labs playing with it.
It's essentially a genocide coming in a total different form.
Whole different form. And it might be an accident that it came out. I would imagine it's an accident because there's I would like to think it's an accident. I'm not going to get into conspiracies, but I'd like to think it was an accident.
Right.
The other 12 that they got on standby that they've been playing with is not an accident.
Right.
Why am I going to send my soldiers here when all I have to do is let this system go home with 40 of your people?
Well, I'm not sleeping tonight.
You know what I mean? But I think it's obviously a different world. It's a different world. But yeah, it's interesting. I just think it's all really interesting. A little bit scary, but more so just a case of
we're living in strange times, man.
It is. It's the thing is we're overwhelmed with so much information. It's a blessing and it's a curse where we're just overwhelmed with constant information. Things are always changing. Something's always happening. It's so easy to get overwhelmed. I definitely agree with you guys on.
Sorry, carry on. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I was going to say on that note, if anyone's interested in watching a 2.5-hour documentary, watch Hypernormalization by Adam Curtis about how information is weaponized. It was made think in 2006 or 2007, but it basically just kind of highlights how the massive information you get is it's not an accident that you find it very confusing to pass what's real and what's not, like what's important and what's not. You know, it numbs you. It numbs people to the point where you can't. Something like George Floyd's happened, and that's like caused a massive reaction. But I'm sure there was more of George Floyd's out there that we just never saw because it just it went. So you know,
and police brutality
and you don't know who to trust, who's real.
Right. It isn't just happening. It's touching all of us. It isn't just happening to Black people. It is happening to whites as well, regardless of the disproportionate percentages. But it still happens. So we just on that factor alone, we should be able to unify and say this is wrong. We need to have something in place to hold bad apples accountable, whatever you want to call them. You know what I mean?
Talking about apples. One thing always stuck with me as well. So, you know, this whole, look, I'm not going to get into religion because I'm not about that. But when you look at the whole Adam and Eve story, something that everyone's familiar with, if you find knowledge, it's not good and bad. And that's something that always stuck with me.
Overwhelming aspect of it and not being able to, as Meade said, filter through.
Yeah, right and wrong. Don't do this. It's going to give you knowledge. This is going to make you question everything. This is going to take your mind into a spiral whereas simplicity, you would have just been nice.
Right.
And you got knowledge. Now you've got all these problems because you got a thirst for it too. And it's kind of, that has always stuck with me. And I think this is almost what we're asking for it. Give us more. I want to know more. And the more we know, the more we're thinking, heck, this isn't right. Yo, this is crazy. Whoa, is this what really goes on in the world? And the more we get to know, is the more we all kind of spiral out of control. And that was a bit of a crazy note to kind of wrap things on. But that's just something that was just in my head and I've just always kind of held on to. It's just an interesting point. But one thing I do want to say, and I will look for that video and put it in the bio, but Akala, I think he goes for like an Oxford University.
That dude's a beast.
Yo, Carlo's crazy. Like, he's crazy. Like, the stuff that he comes out with, respect to him, man. But he also went to like Oxford and he did like a speech there and he was just talking about Black history. Dude, it's so enlightening, so powerful. So, and the way he broke it down, I was kind of like, man, like, we know nothing. Like, and he really researched to get some of this information. And there's so much good things and positive things that obviously Black people have made to society that is kind of unspoken.
Right. The contributions.
Contributions is crazy. And he kind of goes into that. And it's, it's crazy insightful. But I'm going to try and find that and I'm going to put that link in. And I think everyone, Black, white, Asian, doesn't matter, should watch that video and really just start to kind of get clued up with your education, man. Just understanding the person next to you, you know?
Right.
I think when you start to feel a way or someone says something and it makes you feel a way, I think you've got to reflect. And I think that's something we spoke about before. Reflecting is so powerful. So I want everyone to kind of get onto that, have a look, reflect on it. But yeah, it's a crazy time, but we can do something with it. I really think we can. But I'm going to say thanks to Sefena for coming on, having a chat with us.
Thank you.
It's a deep one.
Thanks, Meade.
Had to talk about it. But yeah, thanks, Meade, coming on, doing his thing. He's got those, got the quarantine. Come on. All right.
I got my man makeup on.
But no, man, it was good fun as it always. But yeah, on the flip side.
Thanks.